This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning. I'm Scott Coons, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the Executive
Can't hear you,
Director.
Scott.
Mike is unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott Coons, and I'm the Executive Director of the North Central Florida Regional Planning Council, and it's an honor and privilege to serve in that capacity. We are an association of local governments of 12 counties and municipalities across North Central Florida. Our mission is to improve the quality of life of the citizens of the region throughout those 12 counties. And we do that through 4 activities: enhancing public safety, protecting regional resources, promoting economic development, and providing technical services to local governments throughout the region. Thank you for joining us today for this very important workshop. The Regional Planning Council is pleased to be partnering with the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity concerning this very important initiative to all of us in this region and across Florida concerning broadband services. I want to also welcome several members of our team who joined us this morning. Lauren Yetta, our Senior Planner for Community Economic Development Programs, and Tara Tucker, Executive Assistant. And I want to thank both of them for the work they did in putting together this workshop today. This is the 8th of a series of 10 workshops that are occurring across the state in partnership with the 10 regional planning councils in the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity. As many of you know, last year, the Florida legislature enacted legislation and created the Florida Office of Broadband within the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, and charged that new office with the development of a strategic plan for providing broadband services throughout the state. These workshops are being conducted at this time is the first step in that process to develop that strategic plan. We have representatives from industry sectors across North Central Florida, and we want to thank all of you for taking your time to join us today for this very important session. As we've all recognized during the past 10 months, as we've all been confronted with and addressing the issues related to the COVID-19 pandemic, is the critical importance for high-speed, reliable, and affordable broadband services, particularly for our children who are engaged in virtual learning, as well as individuals engaged in telemedicine to safely access healthcare during this pandemic, and also for remote working, for those portions and sectors of the economy who are able to work remotely during this time, as well as home-based businesses across our region and state. We want to discuss a few housekeeping items before we get started. We will have everyone on mute. So during the second part of the workshop, which will be an interactive portion, we want to hear your views, issues, and concerns and needs for broadband service. You'll need to unmute yourself in order to speak. If you joined us just by telephone and not online, *6 is the function that will unmute your phone to speak. If you're having any technical difficulties during the workshop, please use the chat box function, and we'll do our best to address any difficulties that you might have. The workshop will be conducted in 2 parts. First, we'll hear from the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, giving an overview of the legislation and the process they're engaging in to develop the strategic plan for broadband services. Then the second half will be listening to you and a conversation through 2 parts through an online interactive poll. And we're using the Poll Everywhere software. So you may want to go to pollev.com/goldleaf599. It's on the screen, pollev.com/goldleaf599. And we suggest that you open that website in a separate window on your browser. With that, I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome several of our partners from the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity who have joined us this morning. First, Mr. Sean Lewis, who is a Community Program Manager with the department, and Ms. Katie Smith, who serves as the Director of the Office of Community Partnerships, as well as Director of the new Office of Broadband within the department. So at this time, it's my pleasure to turn the program over to Katie.
Hi, welcome, and thank you so much. I appreciate that introduction. I appreciate you guys. Welcome and welcome to the Florida Office of Broadband workshop today. These workshops are being hosted by the Department of Economic Opportunity partnership with the Florida Regional Planning Councils. My name is Katie Smith, and I am the Director for the Office of Community Partnerships and the Office of Broadband. And my colleague today is Sean Lewis, who is also with the Office of Community Partnerships. And I want to thank everyone with North Central Florida Planning Council for facilitating our workshop and assisting DEO with invitations, technical assistance during the workshops, and collecting information and comments to be included in our Florida Strategic Plan for Broadband. So I've been with DEO for about 6 years now. I've worked in business development with large companies relocating to Florida and expanding in Florida, and I've worked in economic development with small and rural communities. I began working to establish the Office of Broadband a little less than a year ago. Today, we're going to begin the conversation on broadband, focusing on accessibility and what the current status of broadband internet is in your region for your industry sector, and how you define broadband expansion. You are identified as a leader in your industry sector, and I'm looking forward to our discussion and your comments. Next slide, please. During the 2020 legislative session, House Bill 969 established the Office of Broadband at DEO to increase the availability and effectiveness of broadband internet throughout the state, especially in small and rural communities. The bill authorized DEO to access federal grant dollars to assist communities with the expansion of broadband services. And the office is currently staffed by existing resources in the Office of Community Partnerships at DEO. The office has been very fortunate to have the support and commitment of fantastic partners, and such as the Florida Regional Councils Association, the Association of Counties, Small Counties Coalition, Florida Internet and Television, as well as state agencies such as the Department of Transportation, Department of Education, Department of Health, and so many others. Next slide, please. Per Section 364.0135 Florida Statutes, the office has been provided four main directives. These include creating a strategic plan to increase broadband internet service in Florida, building and facilitating local technology planning teams with community leaders, such as what we are doing today, encouraging and the use of public internet service through broadband grant programs, and monitoring and participating in, and as well as providing input in FCC proceedings. Next slide, please. So to meet these directives, the DEO adopted a three-phased approach. So phase one is a feasibility study to specify the nature of the connectivity gap and why it exists. In 2020, DEO submitted an application to the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration with a request for $3 million to fund the study. We were notified in fall of 2020 that we were not awarded funding. However, with the help from our partners, the office has requested broadband studies, plans, and projects that are being completed at the regional, county, and community level to assist in identifying the current status of broadband for the strategic plan. So phase two of that approach is the strategic plan. And the office has begun an outline for the plan, and we're looking forward to aggregating the information collected today, as well as during the other workshops, and as well as via the DEO website, where we have hosted our survey for public input. These technology planning teams that are gathered today in the workshops and in these workshops today and this week, as well as in the previous weeks, will provide vital information and conversation and partnerships for expanding broadband accessibility. Our third phase of the approach is the implementation of initiatives identified in the strategic plan. And upon completion of the plan, we look forward to identifying other resources to assist in the implementation. Next slide, please. The office has also created a website that houses information on federal and state funding opportunities for broadband. We regularly update the site, include information on our workshops, and a survey link, as I just stated, that is for public input on broadband expansion. The questions on the survey are very similar to the ones that we'll be working with today. And we have the recordings of our previous workshops. We're slowly getting those recordings up on our website as well. So if you'd like to go back and review those workshops, they are available. One recent development you may have heard about is the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, or RDOF, from the FCC. That was $191 million that was awarded to Florida entities. And the FCC has provided a summary of that auction by county with the bidders from those counties. You can access the link on our website for more information, but it's important to note the DEO does not have a role in determining who gets what or how the funding can be utilized. Next slide, please. So to prepare for possible grant funding in the future, through DEO, priority will go to projects and proposals highlighting the following. And you can see that here on this slide: the removal of barriers to entry for underserved and unserved areas, encouraging local and regional investment, and those projects that address the many needs which have been exposed during the pandemic, such as remote working, distance learning, and telemedicine. And finally, the office is continuously monitoring broadband development activity and participates in national discussions on a weekly basis. Okay, next slide, please. You'll also find on the broadband website the map of highlighting internet speeds by census block. So the state of Florida minimum internet download speeds map, it uses FCC data. Since January of 2015, the FCC has defined broadband internet download speeds greater than 25 megabits per second and upload speeds of 3 megabits per second. We chose to present the FCC data a little differently because one of the goals of our office is to focus on the underserved and unserved. We chose to highlight the census blocks with minimum internet download speeds, meaning 25.3 or less. The data on the map is provided by the FCC from June of 2019. It is for fixed internet service only, and satellite and mobile data are not included. But please feel free to log on to the website and take a look at the map. It really is very interesting, and we know that we will be getting more information soon, hopefully from the FCC, so we're looking forward to updating that map accordingly. Next slide, please. So today is the 8th broadband workshop being conducted in partnership with the Florida Regional Councils Association, and the 10 regional workshops have been hosted by DEO and facilitated by regional planning councils, and they will be completed by this Friday, February 12th. Workshop participants include a variety of industry sectors, leaders from education, healthcare, local government, and more. And once the workshops are completed, the information and testimonies from participants will be aggregated and shared with DEO no later than February 15th. All right, so you can see that we have lots of industries that were invited to participate with us today, and I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you throughout our conversation. Next slide, please. So I'm going to kick it back here to Lauren and let our Regional Planning Council go through the Poll Everywhere details.
Okay, so the survey questions will be asked through an interactive tool called Poll Everywhere to help DEO collect and aggregate information and testimonies from workshop participants. So first, if you can join the poll via website or via text message or SMS, I did go ahead and copy and paste the link in the chat box. So if you want to copy and paste that into your browser, that'd be helpful. It might be best to open that link up in a separate tab or a separate window. So once you've started the poll, and if you want to use your mobile phone, you'll text the word gold leaf 599 to the number 22333 if you want to participate via text message. So next we'll interact in real time. As we progress through the questions, we'll notify you when it's time to submit your response. The virtual participants will see the results live as answers are submitted. Each question includes a list of responses, a corresponding alphabetical letter. Please only submit the alphabetical letter that corresponds with the response. So this will ensure accurate responses. If you're actually using the Poll Everywhere or pollev.com link, you'll probably just have to click on your answer. But if you are participating by a text message, you'll text the just the letter, not the answer. So we'll now run through a test question to ensure you are able to participate in the poll. And for meeting efficiency, if participants are asked to submit a response, if you can submit your response within 3 to 5 minutes, this will allow us enough time to discuss.
I say pull that dry air in here. Pull it in, move this out.
So
This can move.
yeah, there we go. That chocolate and vanilla. This is the first time vanilla has won. Oh, here we go. Now chocolate's coming through. So the following 8 questions will help direct the Florida Office of Broadband in understanding the regional availability and accessibility of broadband internet service. The questions will also assist in the design of state programs and resources for broadband adoption, deployment, expansion, and resiliency. The information shared today will be used in the development of this Florida Strategic Plan for Broadband. So looks like everybody is getting on and able to log on and submit their vote. Again, chocolate's always a good winner. I like that. But let's go ahead and get started in our workshop today and the questions. The first 3 questions that we have are housekeeping questions, really. They're just designed to help us at DEO get a feel for who is participating today. And that first question is, what industry sector are you participating from? We've seen a really good mix so far in our different workshops, but it's always interesting to watch the results come in and see who we have on the line. So it's great that we have some university folks and those from education and libraries. That is always a great thing. Okay. So let's give that just another minute or two. And the next question is going to be, again, another housekeeping question. And we have a large area, large region in our group today. I think there's 12 counties that are represented today. So we're curious what county you are representing. Where's your area, your private business located? What school system? What are you in? What for which county? Etc. That definitely helps us get a good feel for where everyone is. That's great. We've got a good mix today. Hopefully we'll be able to get some good feedback from everyone. All right. So the third housekeeping question here is, are you aware of any existing local broadband studies? This may or may not be something that you are aware of. And that's okay. That's all right. But we are curious if you do know of anything. It's always helpful for us to know and helps us get a pulse on what's happening out there in the community. And what I've seen from most of our workshops is that a lot of people do not know if there's a broadband study, or maybe there just isn't one in your community, and that's all right too. Hopefully we can start working towards expanding that so that there's more yeses than there are nos. All right, so if we're feeling good about where we are with these answers, let's go ahead and get started in the thick of the conversation here. So of the following factors, which is the most important regarding broadband internet accessibility? And this is for your industry sector. We've noticed that in the past, we've seen that cost and reliability, sometimes one plays a larger part than another, depending on how rural or how deep those urban pockets are that are lacking accessibility. So I believe in one of our previous conversations, reliability was a big one as well, especially for rural areas. So is there anyone on the webinar today who would like to speak to that for your community or your industry sector?
Education, healthcare, agriculture, tourism, libraries. Libraries have been very active in our conversations. So we really want to hear from everyone.
And I've heard from a lot of you in the past, so I know that there's definitely some conversations going on out there.
This is Jeff Hendry. Can you hear me?
I
Yes.
can. Hi, Jeff.
Okay. Hey, representing the North Florida Economic Development Partnership, Regional Economic Development Group. My contribution to this would just be that, you know, when we're recruiting business and industry to come into the rural communities, either from a relocation from another state or relocation from another region, or frankly, an expansion of a business that might be looking to expand. You know, this is, you know, broadband is an essential infrastructure now. It's not a luxury. And so our ability to be able to provide that kind of technology at a robust level is critical in our ability, particularly in the manufacturing industries and logistics and distribution. So those are a lot of our target groups in this region, and broadband, quite frankly, has been a hindrance at times, or the lack of it. And so our ability to compete to bring business and industry into this region is a critical factor for us.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that feedback. Can anyone expand on that or have any other thoughts on that? Okay. All right, well, let's go ahead to our next question. And that is, what type of internet technology does your industry sector currently use? So are you using more fiber? Are you using satellites? What kind of technology? This is important because we need to know where we are before we can figure out where we need to go. And so that's the next question will be, what type of internet technology do you want to see? But let's get down to the meat of what we're currently using. Can anybody speak to, it looks like there's a lot of fiber out there, but is there anyone that wants to speak to what you're currently using and maybe why? Okay. Anybody else? I know that there's got to be some conversation out there. Have you talked about this in your commission meetings? Is there something that the economic development and organization in your area, can speak to regarding the technology being used with what Jeff was saying? Don't forget to unmute yourself.
We have a quiet bunch today.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so let's go to our next question here. So we see that fiber is what's currently being used, but what type of internet technology would help you in that increase, and to better serve those that you represent? We've talked in previous workshops that multiple technologies are something that will be a necessity for the future, because going forward, it's kind of a two-prong approach. It's a short term, how do we get everybody access? But in the long term, what does that look like? And do we need to have something set up that's ready for the future? And it really is two different pieces here of that puzzle. So would anybody like to speak to that for their sector? Maybe a short-term approach or a long-term approach? Okay. Does the RPC have any thoughts on, or maybe maybe you've heard of something more specifically in your community?
Hi, Katie. It's Mel Poole from City of Ocala.
Hi.
Relative to what we're doing here in Ocala, we kind of have two different accessibilities, as you will, fiber, and then we provide wireless out in the parks. And during the pandemic, we kind of went out to the schools and did a little bit of wireless for those schools that are in the rural areas. So I feel like, there's two competing things going on, whether it's, fiber where it can be, and then the wireless piece where it's kind of out in the rural areas that can possibly connect. So I feel like that there's just a lot of different ways of providing service, specifically in the rural areas.
Mm-hmm.
But being Ocala with all of the trees and the rolling hills is kind of a challenge sometimes.
So what's happening now? So it seems like there's a lot of fiber in this area because a lot of people are putting that they are putting as their response that there's a lot of that you're using fiber or you currently want to go to fiber. Is there anybody that's using something different, or maybe someone can talk about the programs or the projects that have already laid that fiber and where you want to go from here?
I'll say Ocala, we're 100% fiber based, based off of of course, how we got started into the business through the SCADA system. So we're strictly 100% fiber, but we do have a couple of wireless connections that out there we're kind of tinkering with. But with the tree cover, sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge working with the wireless.
Yeah, thank you, Mel.
Katie, it's Christy Mason with Lumen Technologies, representing our CenturyLink brand.
Hi, Christy.
So going off of everybody's talking about there's a lot of fiber in the area. Well, the backbone for a lot of networks is fiber based. But when the industry talks about needing to incorporate every technology available, for instance, there are some areas where it is extremely expensive to run fiber to only reach a handful of customers. So using these low orbiting satellites that everybody's talking about with Elon Musk, that is going to be a solution for some areas that companies like Lumen or your cable providers or your other internet service providers just are not going to be able to reach with laying fiber and using wireless, because there are like the tree issue, or if other areas with hills and things like that gets into problems.
Thank you, Christy.
Katie, it's Jeff again. I would agree with your previous commenter. When you look at our rural areas, there's two things I think are very important. One is the issue of the expense of running fiber, or frankly even lighting it up to be able to go to one individual homes, but in disparate populations. But wireless is becoming much more reliable these days, but it also enables a lot of flexibility moving forward. As technology changes, seems like daily, there are going to be new technologies that can be adapted for different needs. We do have a lot of communities, like you said, with tree cover or, with barriers such as that. But there are technologies that are a lot more robust and stronger that just have to be adapted by county or on a regional basis. But the bottom line is, I think wireless going forward, provided that it's obviously tied into fiber as its backbone, provides the most flexibility in moving forward for rural communities. So focusing on those technologies are going to be critical, I think, going forward.
Well, that's a great point that you bring up, Jeff. And while you were speaking, I was thinking of another point that I have mentioned in previously in other workshops. but it's almost like accessibility is kind of a three-pronged approach. And it's that, can you just access it, which is part of the conversation here. Can you just access it, whether it's through fiber or wireless or cellular or whatever it may be. Second thing is, yes, I have access to it, but for me, access is a speed issue. I need more speed, or I need more bandwidth. And then that third part is the device. Do you have the ability and the access to the device? I've got the speed and the access, but I can't get on the device itself. Can maybe someone from our education sector or our healthcare sector kind of talk about that?
Yeah, we'd really love to hear about that, because we're hearing stories about cases, for example, where you may have a household where you've got 2 children at home. 2 children with 1 laptop, different classes, different grade levels, it doesn't work. So there are different kinds of challenges, and as we have these conversations, more and more of these types of scenarios are being brought to light. So we'd really, really love to hear about how maybe some of the education systems are addressing those types of issues, or if there are other issues that maybe we're not even capturing.
Mm-hmm. We understand that every region is so different, and everybody has
Katie,
something.
this is Brad. Can you hear me?
Hi, Brad.
Sorry. Hey, how are you? Yeah, I think one point I would love to bring up, and I know I brought them up on the other calls as well, is when it comes to folks trying to reach those last 5% of folks. Our members and our friends in the telecom space offer low cost internet solutions for the kids and families that qualify for free and reduced lunch programs. So I think, to the tune of $10 a month or $15 a month, depending on who the carrier is. So I think it is an adoption issue for places where they have access, but certainly for many on this call, the pure availability is the challenge. So, but I would want everyone to know that those programs are out there. They are a surprise to my surprise. They're still a surprise to folks that don't know about those programs, but they're out there and they're available, and that's a great solution. And the providers typically offer some sort of low cost appliance, meaning a computer or laptop, for those families to get. So just something as a interim solution before the low orbiting satellites or 5G or more wired community. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Brad. That's a great point. That may be a good step in the right direction for those in the short term before we can get to that long-term approach. So since we have such a quiet group, maybe one of you could, maybe you have a project or something that you're wanting to share, or maybe there's something that's related to broadband that you have our ears and you have all of us here, and we would really like to hear from you.
Yeah, I will echo. This is Kevin Craig with AT&T on the last comment. So yeah, I mean, where there is broadband access and where cost is a factor and adoption is a challenge, and getting the education out about those programs. We, as other providers do, have great programs. Our access program, it's $10 a month or less for qualifying households. And it's not just school lunch or Head Start, it's also SNAP eligible households. So that is one option where cost is a challenge, but there is that availability and speeds of 25 megs. Just kind of depends on where you're at, but there are those programs, and I know Comcast and others that are on the call have similar programs. So we're always trying to get the word out about that so that cost is not a factor.
Thanks, Kevin. I do have a list of those programs that I will gladly share with the RPCs, and then they can share that information with the invitees, and so that we'll be sure to get that out for all of you. I appreciate you guys being on the call too. Thank you. Let's go to our next question here. Please identify the greatest challenge or barrier concerning broadband internet faced by your community or region. Is it cost really a factor? Is it just the lack of service? I know that we've kind of touched on a little bit of this, but maybe we can go into a little bit more depth. Population density, I can see why that would be a big one here for this region. Sean, do you have any thoughts for the group?
No, I'm just really surprised that it's so quiet.
Hey, Katie,
yeah.
This is Mel again. I just want to kind of chime in a little bit about the speeds. You mentioned a little bit about the 25 and 3, and then I think we're doing, or you guys mentioned 10. I can't remember the other speed you mentioned, but I feel like that's something that we need to address, because the 25 and 3 that the FCC is that's the standard. I feel like now with COVID, that 3 definitely needs to take a hard look at, because the upload speeds are just as important now as the download speeds are when the students or whoever are trying to upload their speeds. And I feel like we in Florida, our speeds at least should be comparable to what the FCC is saying, just because speeds are so important right now. And that's I would chalk that up as part of being reliable. And I'm thinking there was a high percentage of us saying that reliability was one of those things that we taught ourselves on. So I'm not sure how we as Florida came up with the number 10 as far as the speed is, but if that's something we could take a look at and say, hey, why wouldn't it be how about a 25 and 25 on those symmetrical speeds, which we can get through the fiber?
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think it's important to talk about speeds. It is something that we probably need to really consider for the future, because our minimum speeds go by the FCC, and that's 25.3. And you're right, Mel. When you have 3 kids and mom at home who's also trying to work, sometimes that's really hard, those download and upload speeds. So I hear you. I hear you, and I appreciate that comment very much. Is there anyone else who could speak to that?
Yeah, hey, Katie, this is Brad. I totally agree with the previous speaker. I think the 25.3 threshold, which even my members have doubled their home speeds for their low-cost internet programs to 50, I think 50, 56, 50/6, et cetera. The reason that 25.3 is so prevalent and discussed is that will be the FCC benchmark. While we know faster speeds are always more desirable, that 25.3, if you're served at that level or lower, or if you're served at that level and higher, then that will be the differentiating factor of FCC grants. So when we're thinking about the billions of dollars that are up in DC that we're going to compete against other states about, for whatever their wisdom is, that will be the number. So if somebody's below 25.3, they will be considered unserved or underserved, and therefore eligible for some of those federal grant programs. So I know my members, the cable companies, and our friends in the telecom space always endeavor to serve at a higher speed than that, because that is what the market and the reality of serving a multi-user household is. I want everyone to know that those federal dollars that can amplify state efforts, that will be their threshold. So we agree with the previous speaker, but we understand that the federal threshold will be based on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Brad.
Well, on that, and I totally agree with what he's saying. I think that's the game that I don't want to call it a game, but the FCC says, hey, if you have 25 and 3, you're not considered underserved. So you have to be below that to even qualify for the underserved piece, because they're using the 25.3 threshold. So when you look at that map, according to the FDA, that's what they look at, and they say, hey, well, this area is not underserved because it has a 25 and 3, and that service may not even be available to everyone. It's just a heat sink of that map. So that 25.3 is kind of, the FCC's thing, but when we're trying to do rural areas, it kind of kicks us out because you don't qualify for those grant dollars because you're at that 25.3 level.
Mm-hmm. Thank
Hey,
you, Mel.
Katie, it's Christy Mace. One of the things, so I mean, the FCC has been changing their threshold. So as technology is improving, I think the threshold is going to continue to increase. But right now, there are a lot of areas that are only getting 10.1 that got to 10.1 because of a previous federal program. So then now it's getting all those areas, and then the areas that don't have anything up to 25.3. So I think it's going to be a continual increase.
Thank you. That's
Jack Bird.
that's good. Hi, Jack.
Hi, sorry. So just a couple things. So number one, I agree that, with CAF2, for instance, the federal requirement was 10.1, and now with RDOF, it's jumped to 25.3. And what you found, or what we saw with some of the winning bids for areas that were less than 25.3, actually jumped to, in some cases, 1 gig service. And those areas that have a little more density but were above 25.3 have actually kind of been skipped over. So I know that's one issue that we're seeing. The other challenge, and I work on state grants and private public partnerships in about 22 states. And in rural areas, a lot of times to provide fiber to the home, it can cost $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 per living unit to provide that service. The other issue is a lot of times, even when we put the fiber in, we may only get a 50% penetration, with no other competitor other than, possibly satellite or some sort of wireless service. So we are definitely, in many cases, dependent upon a governmental entity to participate in the funding because of that gap. And just to give you an idea, I think we talked about DSL. In order to get, for instance, 60 by 5 speed, which we know the 5 upload is still a challenge, you have to be within the living unit has to be within a couple thousand feet of that device. And when there's not a lot of density, the provider is spending all their money on devices, and we're not, able to, number one, provide the ultimate speed we'd like to, and there's just not a lot of density with regard to living units within that device we place in the field. So there's just a lot of challenges, but we definitely hear what you're saying. I know us and others are looking at other technologies like GFast, where instead of fiber to the home, we would do fiber to curb or fiber to a device in the field that at least eliminates the fiber all the way to the home. So that's a lot of information that I thought I'd share.
That's good, but I took a lot of good notes, Jack, so thank you. Because there was a lot of good information there for our office, and I'm sure for our participants as well. It's provided some clarity, so thank you. Anyone want to comment on maybe the future of broadband? What do you see for your community? We've talked about internet speeds. We've talked about how there is a good groundwork for fiber in this particular area, so it seems. Can anybody else speak to what you would like to see or what would help your community? Really? Okay. All right. Does anyone have any, okay, I'm sorry. Did I interrupt someone? So let's just go to our last question here, which is, would you like to opt in to future communications from the Office of Broadband? It's always a resounding yes. We do have great information that does go out and that we love to share with everyone. Any other questions or comments or thoughts while we're here together?
Hey, Katie, this is Brad. I want everyone to be reassured that Jeff Henry is going to solve all of these problems for everybody. He's on the call and he's brilliant. So we're just sure Jeff will deliver the entire region into broadband fantasy. That's my only comment.
My only response will be, I can assure you I'll be engaged. That's for sure.
Good answer. Good answer.
I love it. That's great. All right. Well, if no one has anything else, I would like to take a moment to thank DEO leadership for their guidance and the establishment of the office, our Florida Regional Councils Association for their volunteering, their services, and our regional planning councils for facilitating the workshops and helping us reach out to those regional leaders, the Florida Association of Counties, the Small Counties Coalition, Florida Internet and Television. Thank you, Brad, for always chiming in and providing some really good, helpful information to our participants. And last but not least, the internet service providers. Thank you for listening to all of these. I hope that you are gaining as much out of them as I gain out of them, and I know our office does. If there is nothing else, Scott or Lauren, do you have anything else for the good of the group today?
Just like to say we appreciate the opportunity to partner with the department on this extremely important initiative for broadband service and development of our region. As Jeff Henry mentioned, it's a critical component of economic development. It is no longer an optional service, as well as I mentioned during my opening comments, the importance of virtual learning for our children, telemedicine, and teleworking for those sectors of the economy that can work remotely. So we look forward to working with the department and our regional partners as we move forward to improve high-speed, reliable, affordable internet service to underserved urban areas and to our rural communities across North Central Florida.
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate that. And I look forward to it. Catherine, I'm trying to multitask here and clearly failing because I meant to send this to you. I see your comment here about where do you go from here? Thank you for adding that to the chat. Please reach out to me and you can see my contact information here. I would love to talk with you about that farther. Going further. And so, but thank you everyone for your participation. I appreciate it. And please reach out to us anytime. There is a survey on our website. Please take that survey to help us get more information on your community. Please share that survey with your industry partners and friends. And we look forward to hearing from everyone in the future. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Katie.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks,
Hey, Katie? Katie?
Yes.
Hi, this is Jessica Hawley. I'm here on behalf of Representative Jason Shope's office. Ironically, I'm having internet issues, so I was trying to chime in, but could not, ended up having to re-log in 3 or 4 different times. I just wanted to say that this issue is of extreme importance to Representative Shope, and so we definitely our office definitely wants to, work with the department and any of the other stakeholders to bring this to our constituents.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I appreciate your participation in this today. And, please reach out to us. We would love to chat and let's learn how we can work together because it is important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.